Hey everyone. First, let me apologize for the poor lighting in the house tonight. I am trying to get my little ones down for the night. My husband is actually in the back with them, so we kind of have this dim lighting in the hopes that our kiddos will go to sleep. As most of you probably know, I went through an experience a couple months ago with a pretty big gym and had an experience of discrimination there. And I just really wanted to address something that has, I guess, really been on my mind lately, really been weighing heavily on my heart lately. And I think maybe I'm more aware of it now because of that whole situation. I don't want to say that I'm more aware of it. I think I've always been aware of it. I guess my tolerance level for, I guess what I'm calling like the subtle discrimination or the everyday discrimination has really just decreased. Like I just have lost tolerance for any type of discrimination. And some of the things that I have been noticing seem so small. And I've been trying so hard, like, not to make a big deal about them. But when I put them in the perspective of people that we would either call like neurotypical or people who are, able, like typically abled, it really doesn't seem like such a small deal. And I think that a lot of people with disabilities have been trained or have trained themselves to minimize the impact of the everyday discrimination that they face. One, in part because it happens so often that you would kind of be in this constant state of battle if you picked a fight about every time you felt discriminated against or there was this like active discrimination. Also, I think it's because we have always had some kind of internal dialogue of not wanting to be a burden, not wanting to make a big deal about things. So we try to minimize, at least I do. I mean, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I do know that there are other people out there because I've spoken with them. But we try and like minimize our feelings about the way people treat us on an everyday basis because we don't want to make a big deal. We don't want to be a burden and we want to fit in, like we want to belong. And I think we feel like if we constantly coming off as, put off by the way people treat us, then we may be pretty isolated and alone. And really and truly, nobody wants that, whether you have a diverse ability or not. So some of the things that I am talking about are like from personal experiences that I have recently had. And I think it's just things that, like I said, I've been more aware of or just more put off by. For example, yesterday I was on the city bus. And for those of you who live in New York City, you know how crowded and packed the MTA can be. But yesterday, like, it wasn't even super busy. And this construction worker, I mean, he was like in his full construction gear, came onto the bus with this huge garbage bag filled with I don't know what because it was tied up. And he places this bag like right against my chair, looks at me and smiles, and then goes to the front of the bus to pay for his ride. And my husband and I both just looked at each other and, I didn't make a big deal about it, but my husband was even put off by it. So he like pulls the bag and he's like holding the bag and the guy's like, oh no, I just said I was going to leave it there for a minute. And my husband's like, no, I'll hold it for you. That's fine. But it was just this idea that for some reason he thought it was okay to just throw this garbage bag onto my chair as if it wasn't part of who I am or part of me, or it was just this property, or I'm just this property. Very strange. And, it's those little things like that that really are just so annoying, to be honest. I actually was speaking to a mom yesterday who also told me that she has experience with her son who uses a wheelchair. People on the bus will just start putting their bags like on top of his wheelchair. They won't ask, they won't say anything. They just see this chair and think, oh, a place for me to like hang my bag. And it's so inappropriate. It's so inappropriate. It's honestly like me coming onto a bus and putting my bags on a stranger's lap. Like, I wouldn't do that. People would be really pissed off by that if I just came in throwing my luggage on top of people. But for some reason, people tend to see wheelchairs or walkers or any adaptive equipment that people with different abilities use as this platform to be used for storage. The same is true even with people's body. Like I said, here in New York City, we get a lot of packed trains and packed buses. So I totally understand that, we kind of need to accept if we're going to be using public transportation, we're going to be really close to each other. But there's a certain amount of personal space that every person, every human, I feel like has the right to. And just because a person is in a wheelchair or just because a person is on crutches or uses a walker doesn't mean that they deserve any less dignity or respect. It doesn't mean that you can practically sit in their laps or that you should be leaning over their wheelchairs or that your children should be holding on to their chair as a pole. Like, it's one thing to ask. I'm like a really nice person. There are plenty of times I've seen little kids who are standing and, kind of rocking because the bus is moving. And I myself will say, hey guys, you can hold on. But that's my right. That should be my right to say whether or not that's okay. That shouldn't be someone else deciding for me that I'm, a piece of equipment that should just, be furniture and held on to. So those are some of the things, obviously, that I'm very passionate about, that I've been thinking about. It's just, we really need to be more mindful of like all of the little things that we do on a day-to-day basis and how we treat people. And these things really sound small, but when they accumulate over time, it's not a small thing. It has to do with your perception. It's not okay to treat people disrespectfully. It's not okay to treat people who have a disability as any less than anyone else. It's not okay to treat people who use adaptive equipment to get around as a piece of property. I see the stares, I see the eye rolls, I see people get annoyed when, someone has to hold a door for an extra second or a ramp has to be put out for me. Those are all things that are very frustrating. And as a mom, I've gotten a lot of different types of discrimination now that I am a mom with a disability than before I was a mom. Before, I used to get these weird questions, very personal questions about my marriage. I still get those questions. I will never forget when a woman on the bus who I had never met before, maybe I should just stop taking the bus, but a woman on the bus who I had never met before was asking me very personal questions about my sexual life and my sexual ability, because she saw that I was married and she saw my husband being affectionate towards me, and just asked me almost for like my medical history and like wanted me to kind of describe how I'm sexually active. And it was very uncomfortable in this public space. It's just not a question that you would ask anyone. Why would you think it's okay because I'm in a wheelchair to ask me those questions? I face similar things with my children, particularly when I'm breastfeeding in public. I get a lot of these looks, and honestly, breastfeeding is just a whole nother issue that I know a lot of women kind of struggle with, people giving them a hard time about sometimes. But add the fact that I need help breastfeeding, add the fact that I'm in a wheelchair and my disability is much more visible, and it just adds on the stares, it adds on the questions, the inappropriate questions, the ahs and ahs, like this miraculous thing is happening. And like, I get it. Like, I get that it can be inspirational to people. I get that, like, it's different. Maybe it's not something you see every day, but there's just a respectful way of showing your interest in someone else's walk in life, that isn't condescending, that isn't oohing and eyeing, that isn't staring at them. There's just a way to be respectful. And really all I want is to be able to go down the street and be looked at and treated like any other woman going down the street. With the same respect, with the same dignity. My chair or any other adaptive equipment that I'm using is not a storage place. It's basically my legs. So if you wouldn't want me throwing bags on your legs, if you wouldn't want me staring at you for something that is part of your everyday struggle, all I want is for you to not do the same to me, and to have the same respect. So anyways, that was my little rant about the everyday discrimination. I think it's more common than some of the blatant discrimination that people face, the things that really get publicized on the news, or even my situation that I had with the gym a couple of months ago. The everyday thing is much more common, and it's very frustrating. And it's frustrating to try and teach my children to respect people when they see people being so disrespectful to me. It's hard to teach my children that all people really are created in God's image and are equal when they see people treating me like a pariah sometimes. It's hard for my kids to understand, and my son is 3 years old. Kids, as you may or may not know, they have no shame in saying the first thing on their minds. They have no filters. And my son asks questions all the time. And he is at a stage right now where he is starting to realize that mommy is not able to do some things. Mommy does use a wheelchair. Mommy is different from other people in some ways. And it's just important that everyone who sees this understands that if we are going to really have progress and really move forward in how we treat people in general, but specifically people with different abilities, there needs to be a mindset shift, and you really need to be treating everyone the way that you would want to be treated. It's the golden rule. It's golden for a reason. I stand by it. I try and treat everyone the way I want to be treated. I'm not always perfect at it. None of us are, because we're human, but these are just little steps that you can take to stop treating people with disabilities as inferior or less than, and just being more respectful. So I hope this was enlightening to anyone who watches it. Feel free to comment if you have experienced this, or maybe you just weren't aware that you yourself have done some of these things, and hopefully you will be more mindful to them. So have a great Sunday, and I hope you guys have a great start to your week. Thanks. Bye.